I'm afraid I can't let you leave just yet, Mr. Hayes.
I'm on deadline. Either charge me or let me go.
Marcus with Tamika at park, small smile, holding coffee, relaxed posture, snow settling on benches, subtle warm tones from sunlight, high-level medium shot, shallow depth of field, cinematic realism, human respectful, image ethics safe, consistent character appearances. Marcus Hayes is a black American male, mid-30s, medium dark skin, short, tightly coiled hair cropped close, clean-shaven, angular face with defined jawline, medium athletic build, wearing modern professional casual clothing appropriate for a journalist button-up shirt, jacket, trousers, coat outdoors, with a vigilant, tense, and determined emotional tone throughout the story. Randall Pierce is a white male police officer, late 30s to early 40s, short sandy brown hair, clean-shaven, square-jawed face, broad muscular build, wearing standard police uniform with badge, utility belt radio, and holster, exhibiting stern, confrontational, and dismissive posture. Visual appearances remain fully consistent across all scenes. The winter air bit through Marcus Hayes' coat as he pushed open a police station door. He had come to answer routine questions, submit documents, and leave. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and aged coffee. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting stark shadows that stretched across the tile floor. He thought he was done. Hold it right there. Marcus froze, the words slashing through his relief. Officer Randall Pierce stepped out from the side hallway, his hands on his belt, his posture deliberate, predatory. "Yes, officer?" Marcus asked, steadying his voice. Pierce's eyes swept over him, slow, calculating. "Where do you think you're going?" Marcus swallowed. I'm leaving. I completed everything you asked." Pierce snorted, a sound heavy with contempt. "Completed? We'll see about that." He gestured vaguely toward the security desk. "Come back inside. Sit. We need a little chat." Every muscle in Marcus tensed. He had seen this before, being reduced to a suspect without cause. Every polite, measured word he had prepared for this conversation suddenly felt inadequate. He followed Pierce back to the lobby, the click of his shoes loud against the linoleum. "Name again?" Pierce asked, leaning on the counter. "Marcus Hayes." Pierce scribbled on a pad, then looked up with a smirk. "You're a reporter, right? I've heard about you. Digging into the wrong things, maybe." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I report facts, officer. That's my job." Pierce leaned closer. "Facts, huh? Sometimes facts don't protect you. Sometimes they make you a problem." The words landed like a blow. Marcus's pulse hammered his ears. The hum of the fluorescent lights felt almost unbearable. He gripped the edge of the counter, reminding himself to breathe. Pierce stepped back, hands on his hips, eyes scanning Marcus as though measuring him. "You think just because you have a badge from the press that you're untouchable? Not here. Not today." Marcus met his gaze, unwavering despite the fear curling in his stomach. "I've done nothing wrong." "Wrong, right? It's all relative," Pierce said, voice low, clipped. He tapped a finger against the pad, a subtle warning. "Don't forget, I decide who stays and who goes." Marcus's fingers twitched against the counter. The lobby suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. He noticed a janitor in the corner, pretending not to see. The weight of silence, of authority unchallenged, pressed down on him. Pierce straightened. "Take a seat. I'll be back." Marcus lowered himself onto the vinyl chair, fists clenched in his lap. He felt the sting of humiliation, the injustice of power wielded without accountability. Outside, the city's hum seemed distant, as if the world itself was holding its breath. And then the station door clicked behind Pierce, leaving Marcus alone with the fluorescent lights and the buzzing anticipation of whatever came next. He didn't know if he would leave that station the same man who entered it. Marcus stayed seated, the vinyl chair stiff beneath him, while a hum of fluorescent lights filled the silence. He had counted the seconds, the minutes, and each one felt like a trap tightening around him. When Officer Pierce finally returned, his steps were slow, deliberate, like a predator savoring its prey. "Sit up," Pierce ordered, leaning against the counter. The badge glinted in the overhead light. "You know why you're here, don't you?" Marcus swallowed. "I don't. You said I'd be free to leave once. Pierce cut him off with a laugh, sharp, almost cruel. Don't play innocent. I know all about your little reports. You write about us, dig into the wrong calls, the unfortunate incidents, and think you're untouchable. I report facts. That's my job, Marcus said, voice steady despite the heat rising in his chest. Pierce's smirk widened. Facts, huh? Facts make people uncomfortable, don't they? Make them question authority. He tapped the counter. And some people don't like that. Marcus's fists clenched under the table. I have a right to report. To investigate. Pierce leaned closer, voice low, a menace barely restrained. Rights? Rights don't protect you here. Not against me. Not today. You think you can write your stories and walk away without consequences? Think again. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. He had faced threats before, subtle ones, dismissed as coincidence or workplace tension. But Pierce's eyes, cold, calculating, unyielding, made every warning unmistakably real. You're not the first reporter who tried this, Pierce continued. Some of your kind get carried away. Some of your kind end up regretting it. Marcus's stomach tightened. He had to choose carefully. One wrong word, one flare of anger, and Pierce could twist it against him. He forced himself to exhale slowly. I'm not here to cause trouble. I want accountability. Transparency. That's all. Pierce leaned back, tilted his head like he was studying a specimen. Transparency. Funny word for someone digging through police files. You think the public wants to hear your version? Or are you just looking for headlines? I'm looking for truth, Marcus replied. Each word was measured, calm on the surface, even as his mind raced. And if that makes people uncomfortable, so be it. Pierce's eyes flickered, just for a second, betraying a hint of irritation. He straightened abruptly. Don't mistake this for permission. I'm warning you. One wrong step, one story that paints the wrong picture. His voice dropped, almost a hiss. And you'll find yourself on the other side of a lot more than words. Marcus's pulse thudded. The station no longer felt like a public building. It felt like a cage. He glanced around. The lobby was empty, save for a janitor who pretended not to watch, his mop squeaking in the distance. The weight of institutional power pressed down on him, thick, suffocating. Pierce finally stepped back. Go ahead, leave, but remember what I said. His smirk returned, sharper now. Some people learn the hard way. Marcus rose, careful to keep his movements calm, his posture unbroken. I remember. I always remember. He opened the door to the winter air, but the city's hum, the distant sirens, fell hollow, like a world that had paused just to watch him leave. Every step away from the station carried the sting of humiliation, the lingering heat of fear, and the simmering fire of defiance. By the time he reached the sidewalk, Marcus's mind had shifted from fear to focus. He would continue his work. He would gather evidence, document every interaction, and expose the truth. The system may have its enforcers, but he had his words, his recordings, his relentless attention to detail. The wind cut across his face, sharp and biting, but he welcomed it. Each gust felt like clarity, reminding him of his purpose, of the risk, and of the stakes. Somewhere in the shadows, he knew Pierce was watching, always watching. Marcus tightened his coat, inhaled the cold air, and whispered to himself, a quiet vow carried on the wind. I will not be silenced. Even as he walked away, he felt the weight of the threat, heavy and real, settle over him like a storm cloud, unseen, relentless, and poised to strike again. Marcus stepped off the curb, the winter air sharp against his cheeks, but it did little to cool the heat rising in his chest. The station loomed behind him, sterile and fluorescent, a monument to authority that felt suffocating even from the outside. His coat did little to protect him from the chill, not of the weather, but of what had just happened. He pulled out his phone and dialed his editor, trying to steady his voice. Marcus, you okay? Asked a voice on the line. Concern, mild disbelief, both rolled into a single tone. Yeah, he said quickly, but the lie tasted bitter. I'm fine. Just shaken. What happened? Marcus hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. The street was empty, but in his mind, Pierce's gaze lingered on him like smoke. It's Pierce, he said finally. Officer Randall Pierce. He stopped me as I was leaving. Said he knows what I've been reporting. Threatened me. Tried to intimidate me. There was a pause on the line, then a sharp inhale. Threatened you? You're telling me he actually... I know. It's real. And he made it clear he won't hesitate to escalate if he can. Marcus rubbed his forehead, feeling the tension coil there. But I didn't give him anything. Didn't argue. Didn't lose control. I just kept notes in my head, recorded everything mentally. You're brave, but careful. He's not just any officer. This is systemic, his editor said. He can make your life hell, Marcus. But I also know you'll report the truth regardless. Marcus exhaled, the weight pressing on his shoulders. He felt the sting of humiliation linger, the chair, the words, the condescension, but also a spark of resolve. Pierce's threats weren't new to him. They were just more blatant than usual. I have to keep going, he said quietly. I can't let fear dictate what I do. If I stop now, his voice trailed off. He didn't need to finish the thought. He knew the consequence. Silence in the face of injustice is complicity. You won't stop, his editor said firmly. And neither should you. Just be smart. Document everything. Keep safe. I will, Marcus promised. He hung up, slipping his phone back into his pocket. The winter wind cut across his face, and he let it ground him. Every step away from the station felt heavier than it should, but also determined. He walked past rows of parked cars, past the empty sidewalks, feeling the city pulse around him. He thought about Pierce, about the small smirk, the casual menace, the way he wielded authority like a weapon. And he thought about the countless others who had faced similar encounters, the systemic pattern of intimidation and fear. It was larger than one officer, larger than one station. And yet, it all converged in moments like this. Marcus ducked into a cafe to shake off the cold and collect his thoughts. He ordered a coffee and took a corner seat, his notebook already open in front of him. He scribbled notes, each word a tether to reality, each sentence a quiet rebellion. As he wrote, he thought about his sources, the community members who had trusted him, and the stories waiting to be told. He thought about the risk, yes, but also the necessity. Every word he reported had the potential to illuminate injustice, to force accountability, to give voice to those silenced. Hours passed in the quiet hum of the cafe, punctuated by the hiss of the espresso machine and the occasional clink of cups. Marcus felt the adrenaline ebb, leaving behind exhaustion and lingering anxiety. But beneath it all was a resolve that had strengthened in the face of intimidation. By the time he stepped back into the streets, dusk had fallen. Streetlights cast long shadows, and the city moved around him with an indifferent rhythm. But Marcus moved with purpose, aware that each step, each report, each confrontation was part of a larger fight. Somewhere he knew Pierce was watching, or would be. But Marcus also knew something else. Truth had a way of finding its own path, even in the face of power, and he would follow it, no matter the cost. Marcus moved through the streets with deliberate caution. Each step felt measured, each glance over his shoulder a quiet ritual. Winter had deepened, and the streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, turning the familiar city into a landscape of suspicion and unease. He knew Pierce wouldn't let the previous encounter fade from memory, and he had learned that the officer's scrutiny rarely ended at the station. He ducked into a small, community-run library, a safe haven of hushed voices and musty books. At a corner table, he unpacked his recorder, notebook, and a folder of interviews he'd already conducted. "You look like you've got a war going on in your head," said a voice beside him. Marcus looked up to see Tamika, a longtime community activist and friend. "It's hard to relax when the people meant to protect us are the ones watching," he replied, lowering his voice. Tamika nodded, her expression grave. "I know, but you've got to be careful. Pierce isn't the only one who'd like to see you silenced. Some of the brass don't want their dirt exposed either." Marcus leaned back, weighing her words. "I know. That's why I've been meticulous. Everything I gather, timestamps, recordings, names. I won't give them any excuse." She studied him, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "And if they try something outside the station?" Marcus's gaze hardened. "Then I make sure it's on record. Witnesses, cameras, everything. If they want to play games, I'll play better. He turned his attention back to his folder. Each interview told the same story in slightly different words. Intimidation, subtle threats, microaggressions, and blatant misconduct. One by one, Marcus checked the recordings and notes, cross-referencing events and timelines. Patterns emerged, like faint lines connecting points on a map. As he worked, he felt it again, a prickling at the back of his neck, the unmistakable sensation of being observed. He froze, scanning the room through the corner of his eye. A man near the entrance flipped through a newspaper, eyes darting toward him too often to be casual. Marcus returned his attention to the recorder, but kept one hand on the folder, ready. His instincts told him Pierce had eyes in unexpected places. Later, walking down a dim alley to avoid the main streets, Marcus stopped and pressed himself against the brick wall. He counted his breaths, listened to distant footsteps, and waited. Sure enough, a figure detached from the shadows a few blocks ahead, lingering just long enough to be noticed. Not Pierce himself, but someone connected, Marcus guessed. Perhaps an informant, a plainclothes officer, or someone Pierce had convinced to watch him. He made a mental note. Keep the streets varied, alter routines, never trust predictable paths. By nightfall, Marcus returned to his apartment. Inside, the city skyline stretched through the window, lights flickering like stars under a canopy of surveillance. He logged each encounter, each suspicious sighting, in meticulous detail. His phone buzzed. A message from Tamika. Be careful tonight. You're not alone, but someone's watching. Marcus typed back quickly. I know. I'll be careful. But this ends with exposure. He set his phone aside and studied the folder one last time. The evidence he had gathered was small but potent. First-hand accounts, inconsistencies in official reports, recordings of interactions, and patterns of behavior. Each piece felt like a small ember, waiting to ignite the truth. Still, the sensation of unseen eyes lingered. He couldn't shake it. Every knock at the door, every car slowing near his building, made his pulse jump. The threat was no longer just Pierce. It was systemic. Institutional eyes, the hidden mechanisms of power, were trained on him. And yet, Marcus felt a grim determination. Fear was inevitable, but paralysis was not. He would follow the trail, gather the proof, and expose the truth. One way or another, he would ensure that the story Pierce wanted buried would see the light of day. He leaned back in his chair, letting the recorder hum softly in the quiet room, and whispered to himself, They can watch all they want. I'll be ready. Marcus walked down the sidewalk, eyes scanning every movement. The city at night had always been a mixture of comfort and danger, but now it carried a sharper edge. Streetlights flickered above him, and the distant hum of traffic felt louder, like a warning. He had just left a cafe meeting with a source when a black SUV slowed beside him. The windows were tinted, but the outline of a figure behind the wheel was unmistakable. His pulse quickened. He knew that car. He knew that pattern. Pierce's presence didn't need a uniform to be threatening. The SUV followed him for a block before turning away. Marcus exhaled slowly, forcing calm into his limbs. He ducked into a side street, circling back toward home through alleyways and less familiar paths. The next day, while stopping at a corner store, Marcus noticed Pierce across the street, leaning against a lamppost, sunglasses despite the dull morning light. The officer's posture was casual, but the intent behind it was sharp, unmistakable. Marcus approached the counter, careful to keep his voice low but firm. Coffee, Black, and a bottle of water. The cashier glanced at him, then toward the street where Pierce still lingered. You okay, sir? She asked quietly. I'll be fine, Marcus replied, keeping his focus on the counter. He paid and moved toward the door, but Pierce stepped into his path as he exited, hands casually on his belt. Morning, Hayes, Pierce said, the casual tone like a blade. Out for a walk? Or just check in on your sources? Marcus kept his posture steady. I'm going about my day. Nothing else. Pierce smirked, circling Marcus slowly. You know, I could stop you. Just for a minute. Just to talk. Marcus's chest tightened, but he held the eye contact. You've already made your point. I'm not looking for trouble. Pierce laughed, a sound that drew attention from nearby pedestrians. Trouble? You're already in it. The only question is how deep you want to go. A silence stretched, sharp and uncomfortable. The hum of traffic, the distant chatter of morning commuters, faded into background noise. Marcus noticed a cashier watching from inside the store, unsure if she should intervene or stay quiet. Finally, Pierce straightened and leaned closer. Just remember, I know where you go, who you talk to, and what you record. Don't cross the line, Hayes. Some lessons are painful. Marcus's fingers twitched, a mixture of fear and defiance. I'll do my job, he said evenly. No one's going to intimidate me into silence. Pierce smirked again, tipping an imaginary hat. We'll see. The encounter ended as abruptly as it had begun. Pierce walked away, blending into the street, leaving Marcus shaken but resolute. He felt the weight of institutional power pressing from every side. The harassment wasn't just a threat. It was a pattern, a methodical attempt to assert control and instill fear. Back at his apartment, Marcus documented the encounter. Notes, sketches, timings, potential witnesses. Every detail mattered. He replayed the day's events in his mind, analyzing Pierce's tactics. It wasn't just intimidation. It was calculated, psychological warfare. Later that evening, a group of his sources joined him for a meeting in a community center. Whispered voices, nervous glances, and cautious gestures marked their interaction. Pierce has been around, one woman murmured. Saw him near my shop yesterday. Didn't say anything, just watching. Marcus nodded. I know. That's why we document everything. Every interaction, every presence. It all matters. Another source, a young man named Darnell, added, He's trying to scare you, but look around. You're not alone. We all see it. We all feel it. Marcus allowed himself a brief smile, a small warmth in the tension-filled room. Then we keep going. Carefully. But we don't stop. Truth doesn't wait for permission. As he left the community center, Marcus felt the persistent gaze of unseen eyes. He ducked into shadowed streets, careful not to follow a predictable path. The city, with all its noise and lights, had become a maze of vigilance and strategy. The escalation wasn't just physical. It was psychological, woven into the very fabric of Marcus's daily life. Every step outside, every public interaction, carried the subtle tension of surveillance, the quiet menace of an authority figure with too much power. And yet, through it all, Marcus's resolve deepened. Fear was a constant companion, but it did not dictate his actions. Each documented encounter, each whispered observation, each careful recording built a framework for accountability. Pierce could watch, intimidate, and manipulate, but Marcus had one weapon Pierce could never control: truth. The city was quieter than usual as Marcus walked the streets, the winter chill biting through his coat. Each breath felt heavier, each footstep a reminder of the stakes he carried. Pierce's presence, though unseen at the moment, lingered in his mind like a shadow. He couldn't escape it, not even for a moment. At his apartment, Marcus opened his laptop and stared at the folder of interviews, recordings, and field notes. Every document told the same story: systemic bias, abuse of authority, and intimidation designed to silence voices like his. Yet the deeper he dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about Pierce. It was institutional, and that truth carried weight far heavier than any single officer's threats. His phone buzzed. A message from his editor. Marcus, any new developments? Remember, safety first. Don't let the heat get to you. Marcus exhaled slowly, typing back, I know, but this story is bigger than fear. I'm not stopping. Even as he wrote, the tension gnawed at him. He had seen reporters fold under pressure, threaten silence, or compromise ethics just to protect themselves. He wasn't immune to the thought, what if one misstep invited legal trouble, or worse? What if Pierce escalated further? His friend Tamika called that evening. You need to take a break, she said firmly. Everyone's watching. I've heard things, whispers. People worry for you. Marcus rubbed his eyes. I can't. Not yet. Every account, every recording, it's all part of the story. If I pause, Pierce wins by default. Fear is exactly what he wants. But what about your safety? Your life outside the story? Marcus leaned back, silent for a moment, weighing her concern. I've been careful, observant, strategic. I document everything. That's my shield. Tamika sighed, frustrated but resigned. Just don't underestimate him. He's not stupid, and neither are the systems backing him. I know, Marcus said. That's why I'm preparing for one critical piece. Something irrefutable. Something that finally ties Pierce's harassment and abuse of power to evidence he can't dismiss or manipulate. She hesitated, then asked quietly, and if it backfires? Marcus's jaw tightened. Then I'd deal with it. But the story needs to be told. It's not just for me. It's for everyone he's targeted. Everyone who's been silenced. The conversation left him thoughtful and tense, but also more determined. He spent the next hours cross-referencing interviews, checking surveillance timestamps, and confirming witness statements. Every phone call, every street encounter, every small act of intimidation was logged meticulously. Late that night, he sat at his desk, reviewing a recording from a previous interaction with Pierce. The officer's tone, casual yet threatening, was unmistakable. The evidence was small but potent. If he could capture one more interaction in this manner, clear and undeniable, it could become the keystone of his report, a single moment that exposed Pierce's behavior beyond plausible deniability. Marcus paused and looked at the dark city through his window. Somewhere out there, Pierce or his allies could be watching, waiting for a mistake. He felt the weight of that knowledge, but also the fire of purpose. Fear was present, yes, but it no longer dictated his actions. Every decision, every step was calculated, deliberate. He drafted a plan for the next few days. Alternate routes, strategically timed calls to sources, careful documentation, and covert recording. Every move was meant to minimize risk and maximize impact. Marcus knew the stakes had risen. The threat was real, the consequences could be severe, but so was the opportunity to hold Pierce accountable. As he finally leaned back, exhausted, Marcus whispered to himself, "Careful, strategic, document everything. This ends with the truth." He closed his laptop, letting the silence of the apartment settle around him. Outside, the city pulsed quietly, oblivious to the careful battle unfolding in a small apartment window. And somewhere, the unseen eyes waited, unaware that Marcus was always one step ahead, prepared to expose them. The city was quieter than usual as Marcus walked the streets, the winter chill biting through his coat. Each breath felt heavier, each footstep a reminder of the stakes he carried. Pierce's presence, though unseen at the moment, lingered in his mind like a shadow. He couldn't escape it, not even for a moment. At his apartment, Marcus opened his laptop and stared at the folder of interviews, recordings, and field notes. Every document told the same story. Systemic bias, abuse of authority, and intimidation designed to silence voices like his. Yet the deeper he dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about Pierce. It was institutional, and that truth carried weight far heavier than any single officer's threats. His phone buzzed. A message from his editor. "Marcus, any new developments? Remember, safety first. Don't let the heat get to you." Marcus exhaled slowly, typing back, "I know, but this story is bigger than fear. I'm not stopping." Even as he wrote, the tension gnawed at him. He had seen reporters fold under pressure, threaten silence, or compromise ethics just to protect themselves. He wasn't immune to the thought, what if one misstep invited legal trouble, or worse? What if Pierce escalated further? His friend Tamika called that evening. "You need to take a break," she said firmly. "Everyone's watching. I've heard things, whispers. People worry for you." Marcus rubbed his eyes. "I can't. Not yet. Every account, every recording, it's all part of the story. If I pause, Pierce wins by default. Fear is exactly what he wants. But what about your safety? Your life outside the story?" Marcus leaned back, silent for a moment, weighing her concern. "I've been careful, observant, strategic. I document everything. That's my shield." Tamika sighed, frustrated but resigned. "Just don't underestimate him. He's not stupid, and neither are the systems backing him." "I know," Marcus said. "That's why I'm preparing for one critical piece. Something irrefutable. Something that finally ties Pierce's harassment and abuse of power to evidence he can't dismiss or manipulate. She hesitated, then asked quietly, "And if it backfires?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Then I deal with it. But the story needs to be told. It's not just for me. It's for everyone he's targeted, everyone who's been silenced." The conversation left him thoughtful and tense, but also more determined. He spent the next hours cross-referencing interviews, checking surveillance timestamps, and confirming witness statements. Every phone call, every street encounter, every small act of intimidation was logged meticulously. Late that night, he sat at his desk, reviewing a recording from a previous interaction with Pierce. The officer's tone, casual yet threatening, was unmistakable. The evidence was small but potent. If he could capture one more interaction in this manner, clear and undeniable, it could become the keystone of his report, a single moment that exposed Pierce's behavior beyond plausible deniability. Marcus paused and looked at the dark city through his window. Somewhere out there, Pierce or his allies could be watching, waiting for a mistake. He felt the weight of that knowledge, but also the fire of purpose. Fear was present, yes, but it no longer dictated his actions. Every decision, every step was calculated, deliberate. He drafted a plan for the next few days. Alternate routes, strategically timed calls to sources, careful documentation, and covert recording. Every move was meant to minimize risk and maximize impact. Marcus knew the stakes had risen. The threat was real, the consequences could be severe, but so was the opportunity to hold Pierce accountable. As he finally leaned back, exhausted, Marcus whispered to himself, "Careful, strategic, document everything. This ends with the truth." He closed his laptop, letting the silence of the apartment settle around him. Outside, the city pulsed quietly, oblivious to the careful battle unfolding in a small apartment window. And somewhere, the unseen eyes waited, unaware that Marcus was always one step ahead, prepared to expose them. The room smelled of paper, polished wood, and faint coffee. The courthouse's sterile scent laced with authority. Marcus Hayes stood in the narrow hallway outside the internal review chamber, heart hammering, palms damp against his folder. Today wasn't just another report. Today, Pierce would face the consequences of every threat, every intimidation, every violation Marcus had documented. Inside, Pierce lounged in a chair, arms crossed, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He looked up as Marcus entered, tilting his head. "Ah, Hayes, I've been expecting you." Marcus ignored the jab. His folder felt heavier than the weight of the evidence it contained. "Good morning, Officer Pierce. I'm here to present findings regarding your conduct." Pierce laughed softly, eyes scanning Marcus with that familiar predatory amusement. "Findings, huh? Should I be worried?" "You should be concerned about facts," Marcus replied evenly. "Not perception, not reputation. Facts." The room went silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. A panel of supervisors and internal affairs investigators sat at the long table, their expressions neutral but attentive. Marcus laid the folder down carefully, opening it to reveal recordings, timestamps, witness statements, and cross-reference incident reports. "Everything here," Marcus began, voice calm but steady, "documents multiple instances of harassment, intimidation, and abuse of authority. From stopping me at the station without cause, to following me in public, and creating an environment of fear both in and outside the department." Pierce leaned back, smirking. Bold words, but circumstantial. Opinions. Anyone can claim harassment. You have proof. Marcus pressed play on a small recorder. Pierce's tone, casual yet threatening, filled the chamber. "You know where I go, who you talk to, and what you record. Don't cross the line, Hayes. Some lessons are painful." The panel exchanged looks. Pierce's smirk faltered slightly. This was one of the many interactions Marcus had documented, recorded in full, time-stamped, and corroborated by witness statements. Marcus continued, presenting phone logs, timestamps, and notes from multiple public encounters. Each entry was meticulous. Dates, location, bystanders, and the context of harassment. Pierce's eyes flicked from the folder to Marcus, irritation and concern bubbling beneath the surface. "You think this makes a difference?" he asked, voice low, defensive. "It does," Marcus said, "because it documents a pattern of abuse, not isolated incidents. The evidence is consistent, corroborated, and verifiable. It's not opinion, it's fact." Pierce shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Marcus noticed a subtle tightening of his jaw, the way his confident posture wavered. For the first time, Pierce looked small, not the untouchable enforcer Marcus had faced in the lobby months ago. One of the investigators spoke, breaking the tension. "Officer Pierce, how do you respond to these documented interactions?" Pierce opened his mouth, then closed it. The panel leaned forward. His smirk had vanished. The confidence that had once radiated from him now seemed fragile. Marcus kept his tone steady. "This is about accountability, not revenge. Every action has consequences, especially when it violates policy and erodes public trust." Pierce's silence was telling. The arrogance that had carried him through countless confrontations couldn't survive the weight of meticulous documentation and legal oversight. After what felt like an eternity, the lead investigator spoke. "We will be reviewing these materials in full. Mr. Hayes, thank you for your diligence. Officer Pierce, you are under formal investigation." Pierce's lips pressed into a thin line. Marcus noted the tension radiating from him, the first crack in a carefully constructed facade of power. As the meeting concluded, Marcus gathered his materials. Outside the room, Tamika and a small contingent of community members waited. They greeted him with quiet nods and relieved smiles. No words were necessary. The message was clear. Pierce's behavior could no longer hide in shadows. Marcus stepped into the cool air outside the building. The city felt different somehow, not fully safe, not fully changed, but shifted. He had done what he could, documented the truth, presented it to those who could enforce consequences, and held an abuse of power accountable. Yet the experience left a lingering ache. Fear had been a constant companion, anxiety a shadow in every interaction, and the knowledge that institutional resistance could slow or undermine justice weighed heavily on him. Accountability was not the same as resolution, but it was a step. He turned to Tamika. "It's not over, but today is progress." She nodded, her eyes steady and knowing. "You've done more than most, and you've done it with integrity. That counts for something." Marcus exhaled, letting the tension in his shoulders release slightly. He had faced intimidation, harassment, and systemic resistance, and he had endured. Yet he knew vigilance would remain essential. Pierce's downfall, while inevitable now, didn't erase the patterns that allowed his behavior to exist. As Marcus walked away from the building, he whispered to himself, "Truth matters, always." The city around him hummed with indifferent energy. Cars passed, streetlights flickered, and life went on, unaware of quiet victories and the painstaking accountability achieved in a small chamber of power. And somewhere Marcus knew, Pierce was recalculating, forced to confront a reality he had never expected. The unflinching power of documented truth. The morning sun reflected off the glass facade of the police headquarters, but inside, tension lingered like smoke. Word spread quickly. Officer Randall Pierce was under formal investigation. For the first time in months, whispers in the halls weren't in his favor. Pierce sat in his office, fingers drumming against the polished desk. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by a thin, tight-lipped tension. Colleagues avoided eye contact, some nodding politely, others letting their disdain show. His authority, once unchallenged, felt suddenly fragile. Meanwhile, Marcus Hayes sat in a small cafe, laptop open, tracking the story's ripple effects. His inbox overflowed with messages from readers, community leaders, and other journalists. Praise, relief, and cautious encouragement filled the screen. Each message reinforced one truth: exposure and accountability mattered. Even in the face of intimidation, Marcus's phone buzzed. Tamika's name flashed. "How's it unfolding?" she asked when he answered. Slowly, Marcus said, "But Pierce is being scrutinized. Internal reviews, media inquiries, people are finally noticing patterns. It's not just about me. It's systemic and it's finally visible." Tamika's voice softened. "You've done more than your part. But are you okay? This has been intense." Marcus leaned back, sipping his coffee. "It's exhausting. Fear, vigilance, the constant planning. But I knew the cost going in. It's part of the work. You don't just fight injustice. You endure it, sometimes for a long time. The weight of his words was real. Marcus felt a lingering tension in his chest, the echo of Pierce's threats, the anxiety of months spent under surveillance, under intimidation. Yet, there was a strange clarity in knowing the truth had emerged. At the headquarters, Pierce faced interviews and review panels. Each question cut closer to the truth, exposing inconsistencies, unprofessional conduct, and repeated abuse of authority. His colleagues, once deferential, now glanced at him with skepticism, cautious distance, or thinly veiled contempt. The investigation was thorough. Witness statements corroborated Marcus's evidence. Surveillance footage, recorded interactions, and detailed notes painted a damning picture. Pierce attempted to defend himself, deflect, and charm, but the documentation was precise, leaving no room for manipulation. By midweek, word leaked into local news outlets. Pierce was temporarily suspended pending further inquiry. Social media buzzed with cautious optimism. Community groups shared Marcus's reporting, and the public debated accountability within the department. Pierce, once untouchable in his public authority, was now the subject of scrutiny and debate. Marcus walked through his neighborhood, the winter air biting but invigorating. He reflected on the personal cost of this pursuit. Sleepless nights, constant vigilance, fear, and the subtle erosion of trust in spaces once familiar. Accountability had a price. It demanded endurance, courage, and sometimes solitude. Yet, the payoff was tangible. People began sharing their stories publicly. Community meetings referenced his reporting. Internal discussions that had once ignored misconduct were now held with seriousness. Marcus realized that the impact of his work rippled beyond one officer. It touched the culture of oversight, transparency, and communal expectation. Tamika met him outside a local community center. "You did it," she said quietly. "It's not perfect, but it matters." Marcus nodded, letting the words settle. It matters because it's truthful, because people see that power as an absolute, because even small steps toward accountability matter. They walked together, observing neighbors, storefronts, and children playing in the snow. Life continued around them, indifferent to the battles waged in offices, on streets, and in community spaces. Yet, the subtle shift in awareness, in vigilance, in expectation was real. Back in his apartment that evening, Marcus documented the final pieces of evidence, creating a comprehensive dossier that will remain accessible to internal investigators, journalists, and community leaders. The work wasn't over. Systemic change never was. But he had laid a foundation. He paused, reflecting on Pierce's downfall, the social isolation, the scrutiny, the temporary suspension, and embarrassment of exposure. Justice had not been complete, but it was real. Pierce could no longer operate unchecked, and that was a victory. Marcus exhaled, a mixture of relief and lingering tension washing over him. The battle had exacted a toll, stress, vigilance, fear, but also reinforced a commitment to truth, accountability, and resilience. He had endured, documented, and exposed a system that allowed abuse to fester. Progress is messy, he murmured to himself, but necessary. Outside, the city thrummed with indifferent life. Cars honked, streetlights flickered, and pedestrians passed without pause. Marcus watched, understanding that vigilance was ongoing, that exposure was only one step in a much larger struggle. But today, he had won a meaningful battle. Tamika placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not done, but you've done enough for today." Marcus smiled faintly, grateful for allies, for community, and for the affirmation that endurance in the face of fear could yield real change. "Enough for today," he agreed, and in the quiet hum of the city, he allowed himself a rare moment of peace, knowing the truth had prevailed, and Pierce's power had been checked, if only for a time. Marcus stood at the edge of the park near his apartment, hands buried deep in his coat pockets, watching the snow fall in quiet flakes. The city moved around him, indifferent yet alive, carrying on with its routines, oblivious of struggles that unfolded in its shadow. He inhaled the crisp winter air, tasting the faint tang of exhaust and pine from nearby trees, and felt a mixture of exhaustion and release. The battle with Pierce was over, or at least this chapter of it. The officer was suspended, under investigation, and stripped of the untouchable authority he once wielded. Marcus had presented irrefutable evidence, and the system, however imperfectly, had responded. But victory had not come without cost. Sleepless nights, constant vigilance, the weight of knowing that any misstep could invite retaliation, a gnawing anxiety that never fully left his chest. Even now, he could feel the residual tension coiled in his shoulders. Accountability had been won, but peace was not granted so easily. Tamika joined him quietly, handing him a cup of steaming coffee. "You've earned this," she said softly. "You've done what so few could, stood firm in the face of fear, documented the truth, and forced the system to act." Marcus accepted the cup with a faint smile. "It doesn't feel like enough," he admitted. "Pierce is being investigated, yes, but the patterns, the system that allowed him to act like this, that's still there. Others could follow in his footsteps." Tamika nodded. "True, but today you prove that accountability is possible. That courage matters. One step at a time, Marcus, one step at a time." He watched the snow settle on the benches and paths, feeling the weight of her words. Courage had carried him this far, but vigilance would carry him further. Every document, every recording, every whispered interview had been a brick in the foundation of accountability he'd helped build. Later that evening, Marcus returned to his apartment. Settling at his desk, he reviewed the folder one last time, ensuring all documentation was complete, accessible, and clearly organized. Each piece of evidence told a story. Pierce's threats, harassment, and abuse, but also a larger story of systemic power, vigilance, and the courage required to confront it. He allowed himself a rare moment to lean back, closing his eyes. Fear had been a constant companion, but so had resolve. Anxiety, tension, and doubt had been tempered by meticulous documentation, careful planning, and unwavering commitment to truth. His phone buzzed, a message from one of his sources. "Thank you. You gave us a voice." Marcus paused, letting the simple words sink in. For every night of vigilance, every moment of fear, there had been impact, real, tangible, and transformative. He thought of the community meetings, the hushed stories shared in confidence, the careful recordings that had turned fear into evidence. Accountability was not instantaneous, nor was it complete, but it had begun. Pierce's power had been checked. Marcus's voice had mattered, and in the quiet resilience of his community, there was a sense of hope. He knew the city's patterns wouldn't change overnight. Systemic issues were stubborn, persistent, and often hidden. But Marcus also knew that courage, documentation, and truth were tools stronger than intimidation. They left traces, patterns, and ripples that could not be ignored. Marcus rose and looked out the window at the snow-covered streets, lights twinkling like scattered stars. The city seemed endless, yet intimate in its quiet resilience. He understood fully that vigilance would be lifelong, but so too would the impact of confronting injustice, of standing firm when others faltered. He whispered to himself, a quiet vow carrying the cold night air. Truth matters. Courage matters. I will keep watching, keep documenting, keep resisting. Tamika's presence at his side, the community's gratitude, and the tangible change in Pierce's authority created a rare, fragile calm. Not triumph, not closure, but a balance. Accountability without illusion, victory without naivety, resilience without surrender. Marcus leaned back in his chair, allowing the coffee's warmth to seep into his hands, and finally exhaled fully. The storm of fear and tension that had accompanied him for months was not gone, but it had shifted. He had faced intimidation, systemic abuse, and personal threat, and emerged with the truth intact, with justice initiated and with a sense of purpose reinforced. Outside, the city continued. Cars passed, pedestrians hurried, snow fell softly, and Marcus Hayes, vigilant yet calm, prepared for the next steps in a world that demanded courage, honesty, and resilience. And for the first time in months, he allowed himself a quiet smile, a moment of acknowledgement that while the work was ongoing, his perseverance had mattered, and his voice had not been silenced.